Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Humans of AI podcast. Today, I am thrilled to welcome Airí Dordas and Pau Aleikum from Synthetic Memories and Domestic Data Streamers. Let's jump into our first question, what we like to call the spark. Could you tell us what Synthetic Memories does and what it's striving to achieve, and how AI plays a role in achieving these goals?
So, Synthetic Memories is a research initiative born in domestic data streamers. We are a design studio in Barcelona, and it's basically an initiative that aims to preserve personal memories and collective memories using.
And to give you a bit of context, this initiative started long ago. I always tell this story because it was kind of the beginning story, at least for me. Um, in 2015, here in Europe, we had like this crazy refugee crisis that almost 3 million people were coming to Europe through Greece, in most cases, and we had the chance to be there, helping in some communities, helping some organizations. And one night that we were there in one of the refugee camps, we were having dinner. We were having dinner with one of these families, and I remember this elderly woman who told me, "Well, I'm not very worried about being a refugee now. What I'm worried is about my grandkids being refugees forever." And I said, like, this will not happen. Like, you will find a new place. Like, there is like future ahead. And she told me, well, it's not being a refugee is not about having a home. It's not about finding your place. It's about knowing or being able to answer the question, where do I come from? Right. And she was pointing out something that for me kind of blew my mind at that point, but she was pointing out the fact that for so many of them, they have lost all their personal cultural heritage and visual heritage. That means photo albums, hard drives, mobile phones, and all like these series of things, artifacts and devices that host our memories and the memories of our families, and that encapsulate a bit the story of where do we come from, right? And without that story, we are kind of without a part of our own identity. So this idea kind of remained in us as a problem, as a societal problem, because it was not just a problem for in this case, the Syrian and Iraqi refugees. This was a global problem. Like, there are massive migrations in the last 50 years, and we have seen it all over the world. And these migrations come for war, but it also comes for natural disasters, political persecution, or many other causes. So we started to understand that this situation was not only like a physical problematic, the displacement, but it was an identity problem, right? And for us, using and exploring technologies that could help solve this problem was kind of one of the important ways we could support the solution.
Thank you, Airí and Pau. Moving to the impact, your work touches on how AI can help preserve stories and cultural heritage that might otherwise be lost as communities evolve and traditions change. Can you walk us through how this actually works in practice? How synthetic memories are created? How you gather and preserve these stories? And what kind of difference this approach is making for individuals and communities?
So, we usually work through organizations that already work in this field of cultural preservation or migrant communities and emotional repair with these migrant communities. So this is the way that we get to people, and we try to organize either art installations that invite people to participate, or like, this kind of, we call them chapters. So it's like a series of interviews where we invite people to participate and, bring their stories, collect their stories to then participate in a bigger exhibition or other type of cultural experiences. And the way we collect these memories or we create these synthetic memories, it's through a conversation. So we always say that the conversation is the main element of the methodology of synthetic memories. And the AI technology is just the enabler for that conversation to happen. So usually the conversation happens between an interviewer, an interviewee, so the person who wants to recreate this memory, and a prompter. So while the interviewer and the interviewee talk about their own stories, and the interviewer helps the interviewee to identify those special memories and describe them in a visual manner, the prompter is listening, and while listening, using a generative AI platform to create some of the images that might represent that people's memory. So once the prompter has some images to share because he or she believes that they are representative of what he has been listening to. It's when we start with what we call the memory exposure during the conversation. So we show the interviewee some of the first results, and with these first results, the interviewee starts to give feedback. And actually, this is a very beautiful moment because it's the moment where the interviewee actually starts to recall more details. So they start to describe some details that maybe they didn't give you before, and they start to connect deeper with the emotion behind that memory. So with all this feedback, then the prompter keeps refining the prompt until he or she gets to a final image that the interviewee, the person who's recovering this memory, can say, yes, this is an image that represents my memory. So this is when we save or create what we call the memory vector of that person's memories.
It happens not all the time. Like there are people that connects like super fast with the first generation. They say, yes, that's my mother. I can see that. So that there is like actually a visceral reaction even to when they see the image of something that were only in their mind. But then there is people, I remember one of the earliest interviews that we ever did was with a 93-year-old engineer. And he was explaining us about, telling us this story about when he was 4 years old. And he could remember in high detail a specific road from his village, as well as the car and the model of the car and the color of the car. And we spent 50 minutes trying to generate that image. And it was impossible because he was always finding like something that was not exactly like that, right? So there is people that really connect super fast and people that like really need a high level of detail that this process cannot give.
Yeah, and one more thing, when the process works, usually there is also a final moment that it's very special, that after creating this memory vector or this image that is validated by the person who's reconstructing it, we then print it in a Polaroid paper with a portable Bluetooth printer, and we give it to them in an analogic way. So at the moment where they can see it, and as Pau was saying, somehow like this image that was in their heads, all of a sudden it's tangible as if it was a real picture. It's when actually you can really see the emotional reaction upon what we created with them.
Yes, I can imagine that it must trigger some really strong emotions for the people involved. And as you said, AI has been such an enabler in this process. But I'm guessing you've also faced your fair share of challenges because technology in the space is moving so fast and the rules around it aren't always keeping up. Since you started this project, have you run into any ethical questions or maybe legal issues like copyright or even cultural sensitivities?
So in our case, of course, this is very sensitive topic because it's somehow the reconstruction of subjective memories. So by itself, what we are creating is not a photography of the past or of something that happened, but is the visual reconstruction of something that someone remembered, which might differ with reality, as we all know. And the first ethical, I think, challenge that we had was to create a system that will very easily spot what was being created synthetically with artificial intelligence and differentiate it from a real photography. And that's why we use the very, very early generative models for that, because the models that we use, and you will see in some of the images that we have generated through like this almost 3 years of project, are very blurry, are kind of like undefined. And this works in two dimensions. The first one is that people, when they try to remember, like memories are a bit blurry and undefined too, right? So when you see images that are at that level of granularity, at that level of definition, you may connect better when you're trying to recall something. That compared to someone that will be like super specific, super sharp, super defined. That's one reason why we use early models. And the second one is so you can very easily spot that this has been synthetically generated. So that was the first challenge, how we separate synthetic generations from real generations so people can never misunderstand one thing for the other. And the other has a lot to do with the context in which we work, because we started working in our own community, so it was easy for us. We understood the historical context, the language, everything. But then we started to travel all over the world. We have been in so many countries, and countries which have a total different story than ours. So we went to Brazil, Bom Retiro, with migrant communities from Korea, from Bolivia, from Argentina. And talking with these communities, we realized that, okay, like you need someone from their own community to actually drive the conversation, drive the interviews. So they could actually open themselves, talk about things that are truly meaningful for them. And this is how we have kind of pushed like this whole project to work on right now in the present. We always try to partner up with local communities so we can train them so they can generate the images by themselves, right? So it's kind of a process of capacity building, to say so. And it's not so much about the extraction of memories, but about the possibility of giving tools so they can reconstruct their own memories. And the second one is the limitations of technology. So of course, at the beginning, we were using models like such as Stable Diffusion, which are trained on mainly Western imagery. This we're talking about the internet from the 2000s until 2020. So this is like a lot of imagery from Europe and United States. So whenever you say a house, the image that you will get is from a house in Wisconsin. I don't know, like California. And if you are in, I don't know, in South Africa, maybe the house looks totally different, right? So what we started to do was to fine tune these models. Partnering up with local archives of images. So we could refine and fine-tune all these models specifically to each of the contexts we were working with. So it will have more sense and to the detail that we have trained models in specific decades from specific places, right? So it's not only a bias on a location or context or social bias, but it also have historical bias. So it really depends. We always tell this story about whenever you reverse engineer a prompt from an artwork from the 18th century, where you can see someone like just sleeping like this. If you ask an AI to describe what is happening there, it will say that it's calling someone on a smartphone. And this is like the lack of contextual understanding from the time, right? So we try to avoid that by fine-tuning both geographically and temporally these models.
Yeah, actually, one challenge that we faced when creating this new data set to rebias our model when working in the UAE, which is one of the last projects that we did, was that we realized, I mean, we knew, but it was made very clear that, I mean, local archives are also biased, right? So our first approach was, okay, we need to rebias this model towards the Emirati culture. And, you know, we were about to work with patients in Dubai. So we wanted, of course, the model to be able to recreate visual representations of memories that were accurate and representative for these people. So we said, okay, let's first talk to the National Archive and let's ask for, you know, all the images they have so that we can then select from the different decades, as Pau was saying, what are these images that we will then fine tune the model with. And, you know, the first set of images that we received, I mean, even without being from there, we realized very quickly that they were also biased. Like there were no women in the pictures, for example. And most of the pictures were from the 60s and 70s, before like the big evolution of the cities in the UAE. So we very soon realized that we were not able to actually be the ones doing the selection, but we had also to involve other archives. So we first involved also a visual anthropologist from that culture so that she could help us and guide us in selecting what are the visual representations of the UAE culture that is diverse enough to represent this culture in the different, like in the last 100 years, but in the most diverse way. So we ended up also contacting like archives from families or like Instagram accounts that would, get a lot of information to be as representative as possible. So we very soon realized as well that was like a huge responsibility because archives are biased per se as well, and they are kind of political. So when rebiasing a model to be more representative of a culture, then you also need to make sure that you represent it in their own, in the most like richness that you can.
You've touched on some really important challenges, and it's clear that navigating this space requires both creativity and persistence. But maybe we can look at the future for a moment. Where do you see your project heading in the next few years? How do you imagine it evolving? And are there things Europe could do differently to help initiatives like yours grow and make an even bigger impact?
So the goal of synthetic memories and the initiative has always been helping all kind of communities preserve their memory in new ways, right? And 5 years from now, we have to still be working on this in different fields. So right now, for example, since a year ago, we have been starting exploration and experimentation in medical centers. So we have started to work with medical facilities and hospitals as part of therapeutic interventions with dementia patients, right? So this is one of the potential research lines that we still want to explore and see which are the potential good impacts on patients with dementia. And the other side is the community, which even if technology is changing so much, our methodology has not changed at all. Like we still use the same models we were using at the beginning. The only difference is that we are rebiasing them. We are like reworking them out to work better to contextual situations, but the process is still the same. So the changes in the landscape doesn't affect us so much. What I think it truly affects are the situations, what is happening all over the world, what we are seeing in Palestine right now, what we are seeing in other places in the world where people are still being, in some cases, displaced and memories are being erased, in some cases with a strong intention to erase these memories. So I think our goal will be to keep these memories alive as much as possible and give these tools to the wider.
Yeah, I would add that we probably will also keep experimenting with the different AI tools that are coming up to see how we can evolve like the storytelling behind these memories, but always keeping what Pau was saying, the objective of doing this to help people to heal and, to build a kind of emotional repair by the fact of making their memories preserved and visible. And yeah, especially for this type of communities that are suffering from, political situations or natural disasters or, like injustices, that we can use synthetic memories to make their stories visible and for future generations to also learn from all these stories that we are gathering.
I think when we talk about more kind of political perspective, most of the investment in generative AI and discriminatory AI, we tend to see a lot of uses of this technology as being for control and for surveillance and for automation to make things faster, more efficient. And we truly, and this is just an example, we have done so many other projects in that direction, but we want to challenge that. And we want to challenge also policymakers to understand these technologies as not technologies for control and surveillance and punishment, but these can be technologies that can help us understand and connect with each other in a deeper way. Right. And this goes totally against like the rules of the market and the rules of capitalism, because it doesn't give you like right away a strong power or a geopolitical power or an economical power. But still, if we go to the bigger questions, why are we here? Why are we developing such crazy advanced technology? This is because we are humans. We are curious. We want to answer questions. It's not because we want to be richer all the time. It is because we want to be richer in our souls also. Right? So I think synthetic memories is an example, or we try to push to be an example of this, of how we can push these technologies to go into another vector, into another direction, right? Where the center of the conversation and the center of the discussion are the effects on human beings, right? I don't remember who is the author of this quote, which I will share afterwards with you, but there is this beautiful sentence who says, the value of a well-crafted, well-used tool is not in what it produces for us, but in what produces within us, right? And I think whenever we're creating things, we're creating new methodologies, technologies, tools, whatever, we have to ask this question. We have seen it so many times with all the social media platforms, with all the media landscape. We see that these tools, these technologies create a huge impact in society and in ourselves. So placing this question at the very beginning, as designers, as builders of worlds that we are right now, I think it's one of the most important things that policymakers should also push to happen, right? To whom are they giving the money, the investment? Is the people, are the investors who are thinking about the dollars that they will cash out? Or are they giving this money to people and CEOs and executives that are thinking about the value for human beings on the front?
That's a really inspiring look at what's ahead. As we wrap up, let's move to the takeaway. If there's one key message you'd like policymakers and the public to remember about synthetic memories and the philosophy behind your work, what would it be?
Yeah, I would say, to keep enabling this technology to progress. I mean, it's gonna progress anyway, but as we were saying before, to putting like the building blocks that help all the builders behind this technology to work towards social problems that we have that make us human and that make us happier somehow, rather than focusing only on this control and efficiency, as Pau was saying, but also to keep thinking of how this technology will actually change us in many ways, and how can we protect our data, our rights, in a way that by using this technology, this technology can also bring us something back.
Yeah, I do agree, Airí. I think it's more about understanding these technologies not as like extractive technologies or technologies of consume, but technologies that we will live with, right? So it will shape our society, and we have a responsibility into answering the question, which kind of society are we looking to be, right? So it's much more moral and political than just a technological question, I think. And that's the beauty of talking about AI today, which is so transversal. Everyone is being affected at some point by this thing. So this is about bringing people that comes from all these fields, not only engineers talking about AI. We need more philosophers, we need more artists, we need more people from all these other fields, people who are working in the hospitals, people who are like face to face every day, looking to the real problems of society, talking about this technology and integrating it and understanding it, which is the best way to like make a better use for society.
I think that's a great recommendation. And let's hope policymakers are listening. Airí and Pau, thank you both so much for joining us today. What you're doing with synthetic memories is truly inspiring. For our listeners, you can find the link to their website in the episode description, and I really encourage you to explore it and discover some of the amazing work they're doing there. Thanks again for being with us.